Mark your calendars now for February 17th to the 19th, 2026. Because if you miss this, you'll be playing catch up all year. This is the future unbound. And the most important higher ed marketing and enrollment management conference of 2026. Insights EDU is taking over Fort Lauderdale, where Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top institutions nationwide will pull back the curtain on what's next. Are you ready to adapt or be left behind? Insights EDU 2026 is where leaders become game changers. Register now at insightsedu.com. That's insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15th, 2025.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. And what a beautiful thing this is. I got to tell you guys, I have done so many podcast episodes. In fact, the other day somebody said, Joe, how do you keep doing this? When do you get tired of interviewing these people? And I said, I never get tired of interviewing these people. These people are my people. These are my higher ed brethren, my brothers and sisters across higher education who are doing the noble and amazing work to serve students. And boy, I can't think of a more important time to bring important voices to a microphone and give these people the opportunity to talk about the great work we do in this industry that we have devoted our lives to. Many of us have worked in higher education for decades, and we're not telling good enough stories. And I've said that here in the podcast so many times. And if we were telling good enough stories, the public wouldn't be questioning the value of higher ed, because we know the value exists. We know if you work in higher ed, we know the value is there. We see the students leave from commencement into jobs and make money. We see that there's probably 100 for every one student that complains that they didn't like their education. But somehow we listen to the negativity. That's not what the EdUp experience is all about. We're all about finding our leaders who are doing amazing work, bring them to the microphone, tell the important story, and let you decide for yourself whether this great thing that we're doing, higher education, has value. I know it does. You know it does if you listen, and we're going to keep telling that story. And one of the joys that I have of being a host of this podcast, of course, Elvin does all the hard work. He's producing the episodes. He's putting all this stuff together. I have to do all the talking. It seems easy, but is to bring back people that I've touched with and have relationships with over long periods of time that continue to do great work, and to catch up with them. And my guest today, before I bring her to the microphone, we said, wait, when was the first time we podcasted together? And we looked at the date, and it was November 8th, 2021. Now we're in 2025. So that was in year 2 of the EdUp experience, back when we didn't know what the heck we were doing. But it's been so long. She's still in her role, still kicking tires and lighting fires, and getting students to graduation and out for amazing careers. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and pleasure to bring back to the microphone Dr. Lillian Schumacher, president at Tiffin University. Welcome back, Lillian. How are you?
Thank you, Joe. Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me back. It's great to be back with you.
So, as we always say for our audience, we want to level set. Maybe somebody out there hasn't heard of Tiffin University. Where are you located? Who do you serve, and how do you serve them?
Sure. Thank you. We are in the Midwest part of the United States. We're in Ohio, Northwest Ohio. Seneca County, a smaller community, but we're serving just under 4,000 students today. And we're really proud of the fact that our primary student market is first-generation college students, high Pell eligible students, students that really have the experience that we hope transforms their lives at our institution, because every single one of them matter. And we're making sure as much as we can that every student that is with us feels like their life is transformed while they're here with us.
That's, boy, with all the stuff that's going on with Pell right now, I can't believe, personally can't believe, when you start to look at path to education. Pell is something that so many students get to take advantage of. It's in flux right now. Lots of people have opinions on Pell, but when you look at the reality of the situation, it's helping students with generational income. It's helping them get an education and wealth for the future, isn't it?
It sure is. Absolutely, it is. It is so important for our students all across the country.
Lillian and I today are having some connection problems. So as you hear this episode, we're going to roll through it together. Not everything is perfect when you podcast, and everything is perfect in higher education either. One thing that is perfect, though, Lillian, is the number of years that you've served as president. You're going on to your 10th year as president at Tiffin. That is, I think whoever tracks the average years is thanking you, because it's been on the decline and you're single-handedly turning it to the positive. What's it been like for you over the last 10 years? Because then you've seen eras of higher education over your tenure, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have. And, staying power is a real thing, right? Like, I think, I think presidents go through chapters of their presidency. And I think, if they're able to really be resilient and stay the course, I think that, and feel like they continue to be doing something significant, then it's a great place to be able to build your career and stay within an organization. And we've done that. We've been able to do it. And Joe, it's because of the people that work here. It's because of the people that I surround myself with. And over those years, there have been continuous opportunities to create momentum. Honestly, we are a very different institution today than we were 10 years ago. I think we've always been a really good institution. I think we are an even better institution today than we were before. And this isn't because of my leadership. It's because of our leadership. And it's because we try our best to remember the students that we serve and what we can do to make their experience the best ever. And so by no means are we perfect, right? I don't believe any organization is. But we really do try to intentionally make sure that our students and our employees are having the best experience they can at work and the best experience they can as a institution of higher education.
100%.
What do you think makes you better today than you were 10 years ago? Do you think it's the grit and perseverance? Do you think it's the obstacles you've had to overcome? Is it staying power? Is it passion? Is it maybe that higher education is in question, and that sort of, I always wonder why it doesn't make more people mad. It makes me mad a little bit, because I'm like, my life would be totally different without higher ed. It really cooks my bacon, so to speak, that it's in question. So what do you think?
It's all of those things, Joe. Every single one of the things you mentioned. I'm the type of leader that, I love change, but not for the sake of change. It needs to be intentional, proactive, purposeful change. And, I believe higher ed needs to change, right? As I've talked about in the article I recently, that you recently posted for me. And it's just important that we know that. And so every step of the way, yes, the grid is definitely important, but every step of the way there's been able to build on what we've done, continue to improve what our strategic priorities have been, right? We have been so fortunate in being able to grow enrollment in a time where it's very difficult to do that. So,
congratulations,
really taking these opportunities to build around innovation, to really think differently, pivot in terms of what we need to do as an institution. That's what's kept me energized and kept me going. And I will also say, organizational change takes some time. And so it takes some time to build the team you need, not the team you need to be yes people, but the team you need to really be the team that's going to continue to move the organization in a positive direction, and a board of trustees as well. And we've been able to do that. And the institution, we have a vision, and we're really staying the course to make sure that we do all that we can to meet that vision and be successful. So that's what it is for me. That's what it is.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
You wrote an article. The easy part for me was to publish it through EdUp editorials, called "Co-Evolution Over Collapse: A Reflection on Leading Through the Noise." And when you sent it to me, I was like, ooh, that's so compelling, leading through the noise, because there is a lot of noise. There is a lot of noise. And that noise is all the things we already talked about, and technology, and artificial intelligence, and. It becomes really easy to go, you know what, I'm just going to sit back and wait to see what happens. I want to see what happens at Tiffin University before I make any moves at my institution. And it's I don't know if that's a lack of courage, if it's nervousness. Maybe leaders are moving from institution to institution too quickly and therefore don't feel the necessity to make change. But your stance is, hey, look, you got to take some risks. You got to do something. And talk about your article and why you wrote it.
I've been thinking, you think about COVID and everything we learned through that experience, right? I mean, honestly, I didn't want to be the first one to make a move back then, right? Because I did want to sit back and see what other people learned. But we were thinking about, you read all the demographic information, whoever is author, Nathan Graw, whoever else you're reading about, you see that the demographic cliff that's coming for traditional students. And so, we were thinking about how do we pivot in all of that previous to COVID. COVID just helped us accelerate what we were thinking and what we were going to do post COVID. And so we have always been, as an institution, we were founded in 1888. Believe it or not, the without risk, there is no gain has been our motto since then. And so honestly, this kind of risk situation is a big part of our DNA. But as you start to think about what's going on in the environment, everything you mentioned, and then throw on top of that consolidation of our industries, in terms of institutions are closing and they're merging and all these things are happening. We have to be able to act. We have to be able to do things differently. And you use the word courage, and that's a big word. And I talk about that in the article, right? Because courage is really important, and it does feel risky. It really does feel risky, but it's so critically important to have courage to really try some things and, not hesitate. Even though hesitate feels safer, it feels like, there isn't as much opportunity to fail. I think more than ever, higher education institutions need to have the courage to try something different and really focus on controlled risk, right? And have the courage to try it.
You wrote here, leadership at its core is a relational act. And if we want to transform our institutions, we have to start by transforming how we relate to one another. Talk about that sentence a little bit and what that means in practice.
So, I'm a huge advocate of emotional intelligence. I mean, I studied it a lot in graduate school. It's been a big part of the DNA of my own leadership approach. And in order to transform organizations, there has to be relational development between the people involved. There has to be. And a big part of that is trust. If we're really going to transform and to do things differently, we have got to trust each other. And, if we're really, truly going to be better, that's a big part of it. And I just believe in that. I believe that effective leadership starts with relations. That takes more time. Okay. So it's a lot more difficult to build relationships, to get your team to understand the why, and as opposed to create a directive to make it happen. But when that happens, and what I call you front load the experience or the change effort or whatever you're doing with taking the time to build the relationships, you have such a better shot at having a successful outcome. And that's what we've been able to do. Our relationship among my cabinet is couldn't be any better. I shared with you, we just finished a cabinet retreat, and we have so much trust. And you know what else? The courage to disagree with each other, right?
Yes.
The courage to tell me what they feel may not be relevant anymore. They have the courage to tell me, and I've given them the license to say, listen, just because I'm feeling like this needs to be the vision, you need to tell me if you believe that or if you feel that. And so that's what I mean by a relational act. And that doesn't just stop at the cabinet level. It has to be between cabinet and the rest of the employees at the organization. I'll share with you one example. We have this one group that meets every week, and literally It's around managing enrollment management, and really making micro moves in terms of what's going on. And
Yeah.
I will tell you, we have 25 people in the room every week that are focused on the common goal. And what's amazing about that is the relationships in that room. They've been working together for a year and a half. They are able to make moves and make decisions right there and then because the decision makers are in the room and they trust each other. And that is a big reason why we've seen enrollment grow at the institution, is because of that relational act, of that interaction between the 25 people that sit at that table every week.
You know, you're a better leader than I. When I was doing the work, change management, I'd have what I believed was the best idea in the room, and somebody would tell me that my idea was no good, and then I would respond with something like this:
I like your plan, except it sucks, so let me do the plan, and that way it might be really good.
No, I wouldn't really say anything like that, but I might have thought it. I might have thought it a couple of times. And that is the difference. That there's a patience factor that is very hard to control. I found it personally very hard, and there's a lot of change makers out there. And I know this will resonate with some of you. It's like you see what needs to be done. And many times the student is telling you what needs to be done. So you know you've got to do it. And then you go and you try to wrangle, or whatever word you want to use, and compile a group of people to do it. And you get negative inertia that pushes back against this thing that you see very clearly that needs to be done. And you go, your patience becomes very thin. And you go, well, why? What is happening? Why can't we? To your point, there's art to this, but more art than science. And for those of us that have a lack of patience, sometimes it can push back against our own leadership fundamentals.
Yep. Oh, you are absolutely right about that. Especially results-oriented leaders, depending on your style and the way, you like to approach things, patience can be really, really difficult. I mean, I know it is for me. I am super results-oriented. I'm fast and quick, but I've surrounded myself with people that I can check that against. All right. So are we moving too quickly? They know my cabinet knows I have high expectations, but they're not afraid to say, listen, Lil, we need to slow this down for a minute. So are you okay with that? Can we do that? Right. And it's almost like this aha moment for me that says, okay, yes, absolutely. Let's do it. And so I think that's really, really important that people be able to do that with each other. Right. Because to your point, patience is not a virtue, right? It really, truly isn't, because we have got to be intentional. The other thing that you made me think of as I was listening to you is, I think higher education, if we're really going to have the courage to transform our institutions intentionally to serve our students better, we need to have like tools in our toolkit. And as you were talking about that, I think about one of my just favorite Harvard business professors, that his name is John Cotter, and he talked about the change management system, right? And there's an 8-step process that he coined many, many years ago. It's like in the 90s. And that's what it's about. It's about an intentional process that takes time, right? And so you can't think, especially if you're doing whole-scale transformational change in your organization, that you can do it in a matter of a couple months. It is a process. It is truly a process. What I try to talk about in this article is the fact that while you're creating the process and making sure that the process is understood by everybody, you also have to make sure that the people are part of that process development, right? Mm-hmm. So it's both at the same time. That's really, really important if the change is going to be successful, if the problem is going to have a solution that is actually successful.
There's a phrase that strikes fear into the heart of every administrator in higher ed, and it's, can we get a committee together for that? And it's like,
is that really necessary?
But it is, right? You just go, oh, yeah. Do we really have to? So there's the people management of change. I mean, I think that's the part you said in the article, people before process. I mean, the process, it has to be done. The process never is that hard. It's like never that hard to change the process. It's bringing everyone along in a way, because I found through this podcast and through my own experience, that alignment, and you talk about the relationship you have with your cabinet, and you look across that cabinet and you say, are we aligned? Mm-hmm. And the hardest part about that is getting the person who may not be completely aligned to admit that they're not completely aligned. Because when you're in the room with Lillian, with you, I'm going to go, yeah, I'm aligned with the president. And then I'm going to leave and I'm going to go, I'm not there. And that's like that's the thing to avoid, because that one thing undermines change at its core.
Absolutely. And that will be the reason that change fails. It really will be. You can't have a weak.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you can't have a weak link. I call it a weak link, right? You can't. Yeah. And as long as the leader is creating the environment where that debate, that disagreement, that whatever it is happens behind closed doors in a trusted environment, at the end of that, there needs to be a decision that everybody agrees on. And you leave that room unified in that decision. Right.
One of my previous, way earlier in my career, one of the boss I had at the time, it's funny because I had these people one right after the other. But this boss who I'm going to talk about first said to me one time, you and I and others, we're going to get in a room. And when we're in that room, we're going to disagree and talk, and you can disagree with me as passionately as you can, but eventually we'll all make a decision. When that door opens and we've made that decision, we are completely unified. So you may be, you will remember that disagreement, but you're also going to remember you were part of the result. So we're going to walk out of there in lockstep, because that's what everybody else needs to see. They can't see a chink in the armor.
That's right.
Then I had right after an individual where, when challenged in a meeting, was very uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable. And after that, agreements would happen with this leader. People stopped talking, and you just went, uh-oh, what's going to happen? So how do you make yourself ready as a president to take that passionate disagreement? Because you have to be ready for it, right? Because not every idea you have is going to be perfect.
If you think you can coast into 2026, think again. Insights EDU is coming February 17th to the 19th, 2026, and it's taking over Fort Lauderdale for a beachfront experience. It's the event that will flip your marketing and enrollment strategy on its head. 3 days, over 65 expert speakers, and over 40 sessions. Zero fluff. Just powerhouse strategies from the most anticipated platforms like Google, Reddit, Meta, MIQ Digital, and the most forward-thinking schools in the nation. You'll get the real wins, the bold ideas, and the hands-on tactics to grow programs, drive engagement, and create the student experience today's modern learner demands. The question is, are you ready to lead, or will you get left behind? Mark your calendar, bring your team, and secure your spot at insightsedu.com. That's insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15, 2025. See you in Fort Lauderdale.
Wow, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I don't think for me, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. Like, I think I'm more concerned, honestly, Joe, if people are just silent and not having any kind of feedback or any kind of response. That is bothersome to me.
That's dangerous.
Right? Yeah. And, even, at the entire employee level, it's so funny because I'll say all the time, if you have a question, please feel free to ask. There are no dumb questions. I'm not going to hold your question against you if you ask me something that you think might offend me or whatever. And I've got a lot of thick skin after being in this position for 10 years, right? And it's because it's coming probably from a place of care or curiosity or whatever the case may be. And so, I mean, it takes a lot to offend me, I don't want silence. Meaning that I don't want people withdrawn. I don't want apathetic employees. I want employees, as many as possible, to bring their best selves to work, because that's how we're going to serve the students the best.
Yep.
So
if you're apathetic too, then you're going to be that way in front of a student. Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, the way you leave a meeting with someone and you turn that attitude around on a student, the student is the one that takes the biggest hit.
Yep.
And I think that's a big part of, going back to your point of co-evolution. And what the really the point of this article is that it's right? I mean, there's a part of this, and the part is it's staff, it's faculty, it's change management. It's also the key stakeholder, the student, understanding that you have their best interests at heart and be able to communicate transparently to them about what's going on at the university. And not every university is good at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think, there are a lot of universities that are afraid to share knowledge or afraid to share information. And, often, it can, maybe have backfire, I guess is a good way to put it. But and it's happened to me. There's no doubt about that. But honestly, I still choose to be transparent. Now, you can't tell everybody everything, but I think when you have employees that you expect and hope do their very, very best, equipping them with the information that they need to have and the data that they need to know in order to make the best decisions that they can for the students that we're serving. How are they supposed to do it if they don't know or they don't have the information that is needed to make those decisions, right? And so I choose transparency all the time. I mean, we show how we're doing financially. We don't have secrets, right? In terms of how the institution is doing or not. Our expectations are high, right? The accountability is there. But we really are transparent. And I find that's the best way to be.
Tell them like it is.
You also started something, and I love the name, Dragon Pathways. And I'd really like to hear more about what Dragon Pathways is, because if it's half as cool as it sounds, we all need to know about it.
Well, it's pretty cool that Tiffin University's mascot's the dragons, right? Like, we love that, right? Blaze is our dragon, and we're really, really proud of it.
You could be the squirrels or like the bunny rabbits, but the dragons is better. Yeah,
absolutely. And actually, this was the brainchild of our provost and chief operating officer, Dr. Pete Holbrook, who's been with me for 8 years now. And he is such an amazing systems thinker. And we were, I think we are an institution for our traditional student population, which is about 40% of our students, right? The other half is online graduate education, online students that are undergrad students, and we have some international campuses. But for the traditional student population is where we started this. We wanted to see what we could do to continue to increase retention, because we're highly athletic. We're Division II. We have an amazing performing arts division of the institution. And so we wanted to figure out a way that we could create the least, the least questions or vagueness to a student's journey from the time they got to the institution. So the Dragon Pathway is really partnering up our students with mentors along the way to make sure that they stay on the path to completion. And sometimes that path for that student takes different turns along the way, right? Because every student may have a different path. They'll change their major. Maybe they came to play a sport, but then they decide to leave and do something else. And so the Dragon Pathway is an intentional journey between faculty mentors and the student's actual academic advisor and others throughout their entire collegiate career that does everything they can to ensure they stay on a path to completion and graduation. That's the Dragon Pathway. And it's intentional, right? And so it literally is, we actually have the visual of what this means and how students get from point A to point Z. So it's an intentional recruitment, retention, persistence, completion model.
Well, right, because that's at the core of what we do in higher education, and it's a story that we, as I said at the beginning, it's a powerful story that somehow became weak because we stopped telling it. I would say completely, but there's so many leaders across the system in the higher education ecosystem, and the voices of negativity had become stronger than the voices of strength and positivity. And I find that to be really true of this podcast interview. So many leaders who are telling us all the great things, and I was so glad to see you write that article about leadership in higher ed. Somehow we lost that love and feeling, as it were. But the impact, it's funny because, and you'll appreciate this, I was talking to a college president recently who was in the DC area, and he was talking about providing education to the displaced federal workers. And I went, what a cycle that is. If you think about that, right, questioning higher ed, where all of a sudden displacing federal workers that work in and around higher ed who are ending up in the higher ed system, and you just go, that's interesting. What do we have to do to get the juice back to higher education, in your opinion?
I think you have to be different. I think you have to be distinctive. I think you have to have the courage to talk about and promote your value proposition. You have to. I think, there are these misnomers. There are these, these false, images, I guess is the word I want, of what higher education is. And it isn't that. I mean, regardless of the type of institution that an institution is, it is the opportunity for a student to transform his or her life, right? It is the vehicle by which they can achieve success, however they define that. And that's a priceless opportunity for anyone. And there's still data out there that shows that individuals that have a college degree earn more money, are more successful over their lifetime than those that don't.
Yep.
The challenge is whenever something looks or is perceived to be expensive, right? It starts to get challenged. What's the return on the investment? And so, I do think that there are lots of us across the United States of America, right? Different types of institutions, big, small, research one, independent higher education. I feel like it is really important to figure out what you need to do to be distinctive. What is your why, right? Is so, so very, very important. And you have to take a risk. So if you really believe in what your institution stands for, its mission and its vision and its purpose, you need to be able to have the courage to take risk, to actually make sure the value proposition is something that people know about and people value and want to be part of.
I love this part of the article you wrote. We're in a moment where the safe thing to do feels like saying less, doing less, cutting more. But nothing about this moment calls for less. It calls for more clarity, more empathy, and more courage to evolve before we're comfortable.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we're going to be comfortable anytime soon. Are we? I mean, I think even artificial intelligence, take all the political stuff out, take all the value proposition stuff out, and just lay on this technology thing called artificial intelligence. That's going to make us uncomfortable. It already is making faculty and staff uncomfortable, and will for years. And it's like we have to get right with technology and how it services a student who has technology in the palm of their hand. And how do we make our model more friendly for a student to access? Whenever I say something like that, I'll have somebody who listens to this episode that will email me via LinkedIn and say, you want to kill the degree in higher ed. I'm like, no, I don't want to have the student order up and be served a diploma. No, there's a pedagogy and there's a rigor that has to be maintained in the teaching and learning center. But all the process noise around that should be analyzed for speed and clarity and transparency so that the student can navigate quicker to get to that core. What do you think?
No doubt about it. Absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we have to be doing. And otherwise, you're going to see more closures, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the reality of it. And that's just the reality of it, unfortunately. I always tell our employees every time, I'm, sharing something about the institution. And again, thankfully, because of the intentional work, because of the wonderful, wonderful people at our institution, we're doing well. We're seeing enrollment growth. We're seeing financial growth. We're expanding, we're growing, we're actually in a growth mindset right now where a lot of institutions are in a fixed mindset. And I think that's a mistake, but that's for me personally. But I used to tell our employees, I still tell them, I wish it was easier. Like, I wish it was easier, right? Like, I
Yes.
wish we didn't have to work so hard and be so focused and have these KPIs that we're working on to make sure that we are successful. But the reality is, to answer your question directly, I don't see it getting any easier anytime soon at all. At all.
I don't think so either. And the problems, look, if you've been around the industry long enough, there's always been some kind of thing that happened either politically or operationally. I mean, I come from the early 2000s where for-profit higher education had its heyday, and there were closures like crazy if you worked in a for-profit, which I did for that. That's where I started in for-profit higher ed. And I remember schools closing like crazy. I mean, it was insane. And one of the arguments was, well, nonprofits will always be safe. It's just the for-profits are going to take the hit. And then you fast forward and there's a lot of nonprofits that are not safe. We're seeing it in the news every day. To your point, evolve, don't collapse. It's
Right.
the risk that makes the difference between, try something, don't accept. It's unbelievable to me. And a year ago in the institution I was at, and I'm ranting a little bit, we talked to 3-4 schools that were closing, that were going to close, and had come to the table and said, hey, look, we need somebody to acquire. How does this work? So we'd go through the motions. We'd have these conversations. And at the end, coming down to it, when a decision has to be made, you'd get, well, the board doesn't want to give up control. And then you just go, well, isn't the board going to give up control when it closes? Still, we have these embedded, I don't know, requirements where we're afraid to give something up. And it's that scarcity or lack of courage that is going to hurt some institutions. And you think it's over, but it's not. Because I just read yesterday, there's an institution that's literally just about to close. It's going to keep happening.
Yeah, it is going to keep happening. And you're absolutely right. It's that hesitation again. It's like, oh no, it's not really going to happen. Let's just try to wish it away, or bury your head in the sand to say, no, this is really not going to happen. Well, it is happening, right? I mean, the cost of doing business, the cost of educating students is going to continue to go up. And by the way, the expectation of students is going to continue to change. And so we have to meet our students where they are and whatever their needs are, right? We have to be able to have this, we talk about having a mindset of abundance as opposed to scarcity, right? And you can only cut your way to death, right? Like you have to be willing, again, my opinion, and I think it is a mindset to focus on what are the opportunities? How are we able to think differently for us to be able to grow and to become more effective and more efficient? I think it's a balance. And I do think, of course, institutions should look internally to see where are there some opportunities to cut. And because you can't be everything to everybody, you can't do everything, right? But where can you focus on what your strategic priorities should be? And then that's what you fund. And that's what you evaluate. And that's what you make sure that you're actually measuring yourself against. That's what people have to do, I think.
I think that's such a good point too, because, and I want to, I think this is important to recognize, and I've brought it up before, but one of the things that we struggle with as higher ed administrators is deciding what we're not going to do. We do strategic plans. We come up with a list of initiatives. It's like, okay, everything costs money. A, where's the money coming from? And B, if we did all of these things, none of them would ever get done. So we have to take 80% of this list and decide that it's going over here to the side. And we've got to take 20% of this list, and we need to drive this 20%. That's a tough decision sometimes to make for administrators, to say, all right, we're giving up on this thing that I really care about. Maybe this other thing that I'm less involved in is going to generate more tuition revenue, as an example. And for us right now, that's a bigger priority than this other thing. How do you align staff to give up some? I mean, maybe that's an unfair question. How do you go through a decision-making process to figure out what you're going to let go in order to figure out what you're going to do?
We went through a pretty significant strategic planning process almost 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And we wanted to ensure that anything that was in our strategic plan had to be funded. Okay. So if it was in there had to be a budget to make sure it happened. And that's really how we did it, because we had a pot of money, right? And we were like, right. And so, yeah. And it was that entire process of, okay, well, this seems like it's really important, but is it as important as this? Because, oh, by the way, we have, however much it was, right? I'm making up a number here, but, we are $45 million over what we can spend. So how are we going to cut that $45 million? Because you have to get laser focused on what you are going to maximize and optimize in terms of what you're good at. Back to your question before, I think a lot of us, still get stuck in this. Well, this is the way we've always done it before, and this used to work. And we don't think about the fact that maybe it doesn't work anymore. And the fact that, well, if we give that up, that's going to affect the 2 students that are in that particular. So you have to really think about, again, what are you going to commit to doing very, very well, right? You have to commit to doing something very, very well. And there's no way, if you're doing 500 things, are you going to do any of them well? And so you have to make sure that you have what we call strategic priorities, and there can only be so many, right? There only can be so many. And then you have to go back and evaluate it, and you have to fund it. You have to fund it. A big part of that too is communicating to your folks that, for example, we're finishing phase 1 of a comprehensive campaign, and the focus was academics, because we had in the past focused on, different parts of the institution. We needed to build athletic infrastructure and, facilities around that. It was a great way for us to build our enrollment at that time. But we hadn't done as good of a job, I didn't think, as building some of our academic infrastructure and capital and technology. And, you talk about artificial intelligence, all these pieces that are really important to a student's learning today. And so we communicate the fact that, we can't do everything this year, but here are the things we are going to do. All right. Here are the things that are on the sideline. So that's not that they're not important, but we're going to get to those next year. And then you follow up and you say, okay, here are the things we're going to get to this year. And if something happens and now you can't get to something that you said you were going to get to next year, you have to explain why. Right. But I think it's just really being laser focused in on having some priorities, funding them, and staying accountable to the system, and know that you can't do it all. You just can't. So find 1 or 2 things that you can focus on for the benefit of student success and run with those.
I want to bring you back for a subscriber-only mini episode that we're going to do just here in a minute. But before I do that, I want to exit you the appropriate way for a broader audience, give you the open mic to tell us anything else that you want to say about Tiffin University, anything that maybe we didn't get to, or some question that I didn't ask you, anything that's on your mind. Close us out.
Oh, wow. Okay. I guess what I'll say is, I'm so proud of the institution that I am the president of. We have really taken seriously this idea of coevolution, and we've taken seriously this opportunity to learn while we do, to transform our institution continually, and to really, really focus on the fact that we are creating a space where courage feels risky and hesitation feels safe does not exist. Does not exist at Tiffin University. We are intentional, and we're doing everything we can so every employee understands that statement.
Wow. Well, that's a great place to leave it. We're going to bring you back in just a second, but Lillian, it's such a pleasure and honor to have you here and learn from you. That article is great. Head EdUp editorials and check it out. And live here on the podcast, we're holding you to writing us more articles. No, you write them if you want to. Ladies and gentlemen, my amazing guest, Dr. Lillian Schumacher. She's the president at Tiffin University, and she'll be there kicking butt for a long time. You've just EdUp'd.
Attention, higher leaders. It's time to shake up your marketing and enrollment strategy. Join us at Insights EDU, February 17th to the 19th, 2026 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a beachfront experience and the best higher education marketing and enrollment management conference. Early bird pricing ends December 15th, 2025. Register now at insightsedu.com. The future unbound is at Insights EDU 2026.